test which can give erratic results. The one problem with IgM is it can have a cross reaction with the other circulating flaviviruses. And as I told you, you have a negative IgG in the acute phase and it becomes a positive IgG later on. NS1 is another test what is commonly done, starts off as early as 1 day post onset of symptoms, and this is very specific. Now, presence of an NS1 antigen is very specific for a dengue infection, and anybody who's got it positive, you know it is dengue. Unlike the IgM, this is more specific. How do you monitor them? You look at serial hematocrits and platelet counts, and LFT, X-ray to look for pleural effusion, coagulation profile because these are deranged in severe dengues, D-dimers, ferritin, LDH in severe dengue and hyperferritinemia syndromes. Now these hyperferritinemia syndromes you've been seeing of late, where these present almost 8-10 days in spite of having dengue, the fever doesn't come down. There is a persistent bicytopenia, both WBC and platelets being low, and the fever is continuing. And the child gets more sicker and sicker. The liver functions are still abnormal, and there you need to suspect these sort of syndromes. But what is important in all these things, apart from the investigations, is the clinical signs and vitals. Now, these are the important things. Whatever you do, ultimately, like suppose even in the best of the setups, you cannot get serial hematocrits every 2 hours, 3 hours. It has been written, but very impractical. I'm sure none of us can do more frequently than 4 to 6 hourly. So I think the best thing here is still monitoring your clinical signs and vitals. The important one is looking at your end organ perfusion, mainly your urine output, your sensorium, and your skin perfusion. If your CFT is normal, your urine output is fine, then the child is okay. But any of these things are abnormal, then they can be signs, they can indicate that the child is showing some warning signs and can end up in severe dengue quickly. Treatment primarily is paracetamol for fever and to avoid NSAIDs. Because NSAIDs are known to cause platelet dysfunction, and so it's always important to avoid them. Encourage fluids, more oral fluids, and IV fluids only if the child requires an admission or monitoring. IV fluids not started initially at higher levels, start at the normal maintenance, and only give more if there are warning signs, just to especially there is hemoconcentration and leakage, there you can probably give more. And more so, close monitoring if you notice any warning sign. Because we have seen children crashing within 1 to 2 hours of showing the first warning sign. So it's always important that you have a close monitoring. Do not overload anybody because of course, most of us now have moved away from giving these 7 ml, 6 ml irrationally. Now we are looking at the end organ perfusion and giving fluids. Previously, all of us used to give more fluids and ending up in more pleural effusions, more respiratory distress. Having a dengue algorithm for compensated shock. What do you compensated shock? Mainly the systolic pressure is maintained with signs of reduced perfusion. Here, you can give the isotonic crystalloid fluid 10 to 20 ml per kilo per hour. Now, unlike septic shock, where you look at giving fluids very rapidly, probably within 5 to 10 minutes, here you just need to give it in over 1 hour. The reason is there is a slow leakage of fluid, and the more you give, the more overload it causes and more leakage. So, important to gradually load the system. So, if there is any improvement, then you can, fair enough, you don't have to do anything. If there is improvement, then gradually after the first crystalloid, you can look at giving colloid, especially if the perfusion is still poor. We generally use 5% albumin. And once the child has settled down, the perfusion is settled down, then gradually you can start reducing your fluids by 7 ml per kilo for 1 to 2 hours, 3 to 5 ml per kilo for the next 2 to 4 hours, and come back to normal 2 to 3 ml per kilo over the first next 2 to 4 hours. As clinical improvement is noted, reduce fluids accordingly and stop IV fluids at 48 hours. Suppose you have not seen any improvement, then check hematocrit. The hematocrit is high, then you can give the second bolus, 10 ml per kilo over 30 to 60 minutes. You can here give a colloid as well. And if the hematocrit is low, it means that there is some bleeding happening. Then you can probably, we'll come back to that. Suppose there is an improvement with the second bolus, then again go back to giving 7 to 10 ml per kilo over 1 to 2 hours, and then go on reducing like what I showed in the earlier slide. The hematocrit is low, then you need an urgent blood transfusion. If the hematocrit is fine, then you can look at giving colloid. And if there is no improvement in spite of giving colloid, then in some situations blood transfusion can help. So this is your algorithm for the compensated shock. For uncompensated shock, now there you have a uncompensated or hypotensive shock. That is what we call these days. Here, even the blood pressure is abnormal. So first start a isotonic crystalloid or colloid. If there is no improvement, then you can go ahead and give the bolus a second one, 10 ml per kilo over 30 to 60 minutes. And again, if there is an improvement, it's a similar sort of a algorithm. But what is important here is these are the hypotensive shocks are the ones which end up in major problems, and we can quickly lose the child. So here you will need to be a little more aggressive with resuscitation. And here what we have seen is the colloids do help definitely to achieve more normal perfusions and better improvement in the blood pressure. Now, a hot topic for pediatricians, vaccines. Now, coming to the vaccines in dengue, I tried to keep the clinical picture very short. I know dengue as such, you can take 2 to 3 hours of lecture on just dengue alone. So I just try to give the gist. You can always discuss any of these questions at the in between the talk. Probably we'll break around 10-15 minutes from now. There we can probably discuss any questions. And vaccines in dengue. The first licensed dengue vaccine, the Dengvaxia, made by Sanofi, is a life attenuated tetravalent vaccine, and it employs the yellow fever template, and it has 3 injections at doses of 0.5 ml, administered subcutaneously at 6 monthly intervals. And vaccine efficacy, they found that they actually gave in 2 to 16 years, but now the product is licensed to be used from 9 years and above. What it was found was it was not found to be very effective in children who were less than 9. It was found to have 60% efficacy, whereas it was better off in children above 9 to 16 years. In 9 to 16 years, it was 65% efficacy, whereas between 2 to 8 years, it was only 45% efficacy. So that's why it is licensed more so in children above 9 years of age. But one thing was, it was definitely more effective in children above 9 years to prevent severe dengue. So Dengvaxia is more or less licensed for children above 9 years, and it is known to prevent severe dengue. Especially in adults, it is 93.2% efficacious, and in children above 9 years, it is almost 80% efficacious in preventing severe dengue. And the main problem, whatever it has been noted, and the reason for the vaccine not being universally available is that this vaccination was found to cause problems, especially if you've never had any prior exposure to dengue and you have given this vaccine. Suppose you get an infection of dengue after the vaccination, then it was found to be very severe as compared to a child or a person who has never had an infection. So what it means is, the second after vaccination you get a dengue, it is going to be more severe. So in individuals who were seropositive before vaccination, the incidence of severe dengue is only one per thousand, and it was 4.8 per thousand when not vaccinated. Whereas individuals who were seronegative before vaccination, the incidence of severe dengue was 4 per thousand when vaccinated, and it was 1.7 per thousand when not vaccinated. So suppose in countries like India, where we can say we have almost 70% dengue seroprevalence at 9 years, or if 5-year follow-up period, we can take that one excess case of hospitalized dengue in vaccinated seronegative individuals. Matlab, any child who was seronegative prior to vaccination, they had one excess case of hospitalized dengue. Whereas 7 hospitalized dengue cases would be prevented in vaccinated seropositive. So it's definitely there is a benefit, no doubts, but there is also a little bit of harm of these children who were seronegative to have more problems. That's why the dengue vaccination is probably still on hold. There is another vaccine which is coming up, the Takeda vaccine, which probably might be licensed to be used in 2022-23, and the initial phase 2 trials are promising. So we just have to wait for it. Now coming to the current pandemic, which has been, I'm sure most of us have become WhatsApp experts on this. I'm sure very few of us have seen these children, but I'm sure all of us are experts now. I think uh, because of our WhatsApp. Now, there are different stages of infection in COVID-19 caused by the corona SARS-CoV-2, and different stages varies from asymptomatic infection, mild, moderate, severe, and critical. So asymptomatic infections, there everything else is normal. We do not have any clinical symptoms and signs, and even chest imaging results are normal. Whereas the PCR is positive. And mild, where you have symptoms of acute upper respiratory infection, including fever, fatigue, myalgia, cough, sore throat, runny nose, and sneezing. And physical examination can just show a congestion of pharynx and no escalatory abnormalities. And some cases may not have fever also, and can only have digestive symptoms like nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. Moderate, where you have pneumonia, continuous frequent fever spikes, and cough, mostly a dry cough, of course, followed by productive cough. Some can have wheezing and shortness of breaths, and some cases may have no clinical signs and symptoms, but just CT showing lung lesions which are subclinical. Severe, here you have hypoxia, oxygen saturation less than 92%, and you have severe fever and can also have gastrointestinal symptoms. Critical, where the children quickly progresses to acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS, respiratory failure, and can also have shock, encephalopathy, myocardial injury, heart failure, coagulation dysfunction, and acute kidney injury. And this organ dysfunction can be definitely life-threatening. Now, recently, we've been hearing a lot of post-COVID Kawasaki diseases and all those things which are manifesting. A lot of reports coming from UK. Symptom profile, 20 to 25% of children were completely asymptomatic, and commonest symptoms are fever and cough. Cold was not very common. Myalgias and sore throats are the other associated symptoms, and few children only presented with diarrhea and vomiting. I would say 50% of them did not have fever. 50% of them did not have cough. Few of them had just myalgias. Few of them had diarrhea and vomiting. And if you look, this is a study published in American Academy of Pediatrics, Dong et al. Almost looked at 2,000 children who've had COVID positive, and they found that asymptomatic almost 5%, and mild symptomatic almost constituted 55%, where symptoms were very, very mild. It can be just a mild cold or a mild sore throat. So almost 55% of the children did not manifest major symptoms at all. And moderate, again, another 40%. So almost, if you look at it, 95% of them did not require admission also. Severe, 5% of them, and a critical 0.6% of them. So primarily, if you look at under 1 year, almost 10% of these individuals had a problem. But above that, since the percentage starts reducing, here almost 7%, and again at age of after 6, it is very minimal. Only 4 to 5% of them have problems. And the days of symptoms from onset to diagnosis is very less. The reason is most of the children who were diagnosed because one of their adult was positive. So they got tested. So that's why most of these children were picked up very fast. And most of them were asymptomatic that ways also. Now the question comes, why are children less sick than adults? Probably because they were cared at home and they did not travel too much, and that's why they did not fall sick, was one hypothesis. And it was also speculated that children were less sensitive to 2019 COVID because the maturity and function of the ACE2 receptors, which has been the corona binding receptor, might be lower in children as compared to adults. And additionally, children do experience a lot of other respiratory infections, including the normal coronaviruses, which have they given any cross immunity to them? We don't know. And again, the cytokine storm has not, as is one of the reason why most of these adults have become sick. Cytokine storm in children has been less. So probably is that the reason why the children have been less sicker? We just do not know. We don't have answers to these questions right now. Probably we might be a little wiser 3-4 months down the line. And coming to the newborns, the current evidence is that there is very low rates of peripartum transmission, or probably negligible rates of peripartum transmission. Most of the transmission has been found to be postnatal. And again, there are 1 or 2 episodes where they found that the mother was infected in the 3rd trimester, and after the baby was delivered, when they did the CT scan, they found few pneumonia lesions in the CT scans of these newborns. That's why, with confidence, we cannot say 100% that there is no perinatal transmission, but more or less in all these, wherever they have tested the body fluid, breast milk, it has been found to be negative. So most likely it is transmitted postnatally only through the contact with the mother. So any of these children, you have to put the mask onto the mother, and mother should, if at all breastfeeding, she should follow all the hand hygiene and the other hygiene measures. And the best solution is probably expressing milk from the mother and somebody else feeding the baby. Probably that is the best solution, which is safer for everybody. Now, coming to the vaccine development for this, now everybody has been looking forward for a vaccine. Most of the people would talk about herd immunity, vaccine development, they're thinking that lockdown is going to go on till such time where we have a vaccine, and everybody thinks that vaccine is probably available in August, September. Let's see what is in this vaccine. So vaccine development normally takes a lot of years, and researchers here fortunately are not starting from scratch, because they have done some research in SARS on MERS vaccine. So definitely this vaccine, this virus is related to it. So they do not need to start from scratch. And they've been targeting the spike-like structure called S protein, which attaches to the surface of these human cells. The challenges, the several vaccines for SARS have been tested in animals. Most of the vaccines improved the animal survival but did not prevent infection. That is where the challenge is. And some vaccines also, unfortunately, cause complications such as lung damage. So we do not know whether this vaccine, whatever we are looking at, is safer or will give a safer solution for all our problems today. And after infection with coronaviruses, the reinfection with same virus, although mild, was also happening in few fraction of people. So is it possible or not? We do not know the answers for it. So these are the challenges, especially when we are looking at a vaccine for a long-term protection. And the common mortality, the major mortality has been in people who are older than 50 And we all know that older people usually do not respond to vaccines as well as younger people. And realistically, if we talk about a vaccine, will probably take about 1 to 1.5 years from now to be available for mass consumption. If you look at the vaccine as such, the flow, where here we go into the phase 1. What do you mean by phase 1? Phase 1 is they just give this vaccine in very few individuals, probably 10 or less than that, and look at the safety of this vaccine. Phase 2, you probably give it to 200 people and then look at how does this person react in regard to the safety and immunogenicity. And phase 3 is a larger trial where you give it in a larger population, and that is where you get majority of your side effects, where you look at the major and the minor side effects when you get into the phase 3. Now, where are we now? I'll come to that in the next slide. But primarily, in a pandemic, probably you can cut short all these things and get on to this phase quickly. But again, the problems, as I told you, can this vaccine cause more problems, or can this vaccine give a long-term solution? We have no idea as of now. Now, these are the vaccines which have been on currently. And you look at the first one, that is the Chinese vaccine, where they've been trying to do it in the Beijing Institute of Biotechnology. It has gone into the phase 2 now. Phase 1 was successful. They went into the phase 2. Again, the second one, also, this also has gone into the second one. Now, this is a US-based trial where they've gone into the second trial. Again, the next Wuhan and Beijing Institute, again the Chinese ones, where they are just going into the phase 2. There are another 4 vaccines which are again in the phase 1, phase 2 scenario, including the one from the University of Oxford, which has recently, I think all of us might have got WhatsApp forward or read in the newspaper about it. And these are the ones which are in pipeline. A realistic time frame for the first Chinese vaccine, phase 2 ends in Jan 2021, and that is when the phase 3 would start. So where are we looking at? I don't know, probably 1.5 years from now. Any questions or anything? I think probably we can give a break for some time and then discuss these questions. I hand it over to Dr. Sri Krishna.
Yeah, Dr. Sri Krishna, are you available?
Sir, Chapan sir.
Let Dr. Sri Krishna talk.
Yeah. 1 second. I'll just unmute. Sri Krishna sir, over to you.
Yes. How much time we left first? I want to ask that question.
No issue. No issue. Time is not an issue.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Sir. Yeah.
It's a nice presentation, especially about the COVID. All confusion only. Dr. Preetham has presented very well. Dr. Preetham, just 1 or 2 questions only I got here regarding the social distance. How do you maintain social distance if breastfeeding is advised?
Yes, sir.
This social distance doesn't mean the mother and child distance.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So that should.
Yes, sir.
You want to say?
I think primarily, sir, you just have to make sure that whatever the respiratory droplets are there, the baby is not in that vicinity to inhale those droplets. I think that is what is key here.
Here, one thing, one doubt usually do get in day-to-day practice regarding the social distance in the practitioner point of view, or if they have to get the child, do they need to keep the mask for the child also? Of course, for adults, it is must.
Yes, sir. I would say less than 2-year-old, yes, mask is not, I mean, definitely going to probably increase the hypoxia. So that's why not recommended, but anybody above 2 years can wear a mask. What has been found in Wuhan, sir, is that most of these children were the ones who were actually infecting adults, because either with their cough, with their etiquettes or whatever it is, they were having more aerosol transmission. So these are the ones who were infecting the adults. So that is one challenge when it comes to children, because of either they are more mobile, and also the aerosol, they do not have that hygiene to look at controlling that aerosol. So that's why these are the ones which are little dangerous sometimes. No. Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Yeah.
Sri Krishna, sir, you are on. Sir, yeah, you are unmuted now. I don't know why you've been muted. Sri Krishna, sir, మీరు unmute చేసేసాను. You can talk.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So the here I think the like aerosol therapy, the routine practice of nebulizers, how do you advise in coming days for the patients?
Yes, sir. Sir, probably a home nebulizer is okay because you are using it for yourself, and definitely if your parents, it's a family, so it still probably is okay. But I would say, especially in the hospital scenario, please do not use nebulizers, because that is dangerous for your staff and the environment around. Because these are the ones who can get these droplets out, and they can deposit to a distance of almost 6 to 8 feet. So
okay, then what about management of acute asthma in ICU? When the patient is coming, his child is coming, obviously we depend on nebulizer therapy. Though in OP practice, actually speaking, in OP practice, it's not advisable to use nebulizer therapy.
Yes, sir.
But what do you do in emergency situation, ICU setups, where the child cannot have the inhaler therapy, routine inhalers?
Yes, sir.
Obviously, you have to go for nebulizer. How do you manage?
Sir, I think the best solution still is putting a mask on the child and putting the nebulizer underneath. I mean, underneath the mask. Probably that at least prevents your the whatever aerosol the child is generating to be dispersed into the.
Face mask, they should use it, isn't it?
Hello? Yes, sir.
So they should use that individual mask should be used irrespective of the place and their economic status also. I feel that's a correct answer. Okay, even in the emergency situation. Now few more questions, we got it.
Sri Krishna, sir, as you go, sir, as you find the next, yes, sir, as you find the next question, I have Dr. Suchitra. Dr. Suchitra, you're unmuted. Please go ahead with your question.
Yes, sir. So regarding the previous one, what we were talking just now, am I audible, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead. Dr. Suchitra, yes. You are the COVID warrior at Gandhi Hospital. Yes. Please ask the question and also share your experience from Gandhi. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So recently we had a newborn born to a COVID positive mother. Mother was positive just a day before her delivery because her grandmother was infected with that and she expired in the family. So all the family members were tested. And unfortunately, this woman who is about to expect a baby turned out to be positive. And after delivery, we have seen that immediately we went for because the baby was healthy, we had to give a bath to the baby thinking that the amniotic fluid also, because it's a viremia phase, we suspected that it could transmit to the baby also through placenta. So we have given a wash to the baby, and then meconium as well as nasopharyngeal swab both were sent around at 2 hours of age, and they turned out to be negative. Now we have separated baby and mother, keeping them in different rooms because mother doesn't have any of her attendants around with her. So ideally, we have let our counselor, like the lactation counselor, to be there to get the breast milk by cleaning the breast and expressing the milk and getting it to the baby in the NICU and keeping the baby separately. So now today it is almost 48 hours over. So next tomorrow morning, we are planning for the next swab to expect if there is any infection with that. That's what was first thing. So first observation regarding the breastfeeding. And the second thing is regarding the asthma, what you are sharing it, sir, that is very good that if possible at home, it is good. But if any child who comes with severe respiratory, failure coming to asthma to your center, always it is ideal now that we have to separate a room and identify that area for the nebulizations, because that could be the area. Once the nebulization is provided in that area, it has to be sanitized, like hypochlorite solution has to be sprayed, or that room has to be cleaned thoroughly if you suspect that case to be a COVID positive. That is one suggestion. And going ahead with aerosol infection, we are finding like contacts are definitely the adults, but children are turning recurrent positive. We have seen children out of 120, what we have seen, at least 10 or 15 children we have seen who are positive after it has been 24 days. Yeah, exactly. After 24 days also, they're turning out to be positive. So immunological response in them, they were vaccinated. We were asking for the history of vaccinations also, which we have traced out. The vaccination history is good, but then also the children, like, I don't know what the factors are, because immunological status has to be still worked out. So they're turning out to be positive. That means that the viremia is still persistent, and they are the group who can infect others, though they are active, though they are asymptomatic.
Thank you, Dr. Suchitra. Dr. Surendranath, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Dr. Preetham, are you admitting any COVID cases at your hospital?
No, sir. Actually, what we are doing, sir, is anybody who's having a respiratory symptoms, we are isolating them into a separate ward, and then sending the swab to Gandhi or NIMS. And whenever, suppose if it is positive, then the patient obviously has to be shifted to these two centers only. But touchwood, as of now, we have not got anybody positive after sending also. I mean, there are 3-4 ventilated children with acute respiratory infections, but we did not get any positive.
Now, one more question. How are we isolating these children, young children without mother?
No, sir. I mean, isolation in the sense, suppose
COVID positive child is there.
Okay, COVID positive we did not have, sir, I think.
How are you maintaining? I mean, it's difficult not to separate the child from the mother.
I think Dr. Suchitra has to answer it, sir, because we have not had any COVID positive being handled in our centers.
Have positive children with the negative mothers. Though the mothers are negative, we have to keep the child with the mother, because we can't separately keep the child without mother there. So mask is provided to the mother. And because if the children are less than 5-year-old, we are not giving any mask to the child. But if they require any oxygen support and all, yes, we are providing it. And the bed spacing is like at least 1 meter distance we are maintaining it, sir. The beds are separate.
Okay.
But then mother is providing all the care. Because previously we have seen one case wherein it was a newborn baby of 22 days old. So that baby was positive thrice. But still the mother who was nursing the baby all the time, she never developed any positive, never she was turned out to be positive. So actually, I think children are one side, like they cannot transmit so fast. I mean, less than 5-year-old, that's what we are saying, sir. Even if they're older also, we are keeping them with the parents only. With the parents. We are not providing them a separate this thing.
Thank you, Dr. Suchitra and Dr. Surendranath. Srikshna, sir, can we proceed with the presentation?
Yes, Dr. Preetham, one question.
Yes.
Maybe I think Suchitra also can answer this. If there is how do you prevent the transmission from asymptomatic case to healthcare worker, even if you wear the best PPE, how can we prevent from transmission from healthcare worker to next patient? That means I think he is sitting in a day-to-day OPD. If he gets an asymptomatic patient first, though this healthcare worker is using the PPE, there is no guarantee that he can transmit the infection to the next patient, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So how to tackle this doubt? Because it's a common doubt for most of the practitioners are having.
Yes. Sir, I think if I understand right, what you're saying is you have seen the first patient was an asymptomatic
Yes.
COVID-19 patient, and he has probably dispersed aerosols or whatever it is in your room and walked away.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the next patient is another patient, and how you are saying that whether the earlier patient has a chance of infecting this patient because of the aerosol, whatever it is what your question is, isn't it, sir?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Technically, yes, I think it's very possible because in studies, whatever have been done, most of the surfaces can have COVID-19 for almost 5 to 6 hours minimum at the room temperature of around 25-27 degrees. So still the best solution is probably cleaning it up, and even otherwise also whoever is the patient, I mean whoever is coming into not just in the hospital, like we have seen that the hotspots in India primarily still as on today are still not hospitals, but these I would say one of those centers, the mosques in Delhi, and now it's the Chennai market, where these are the hotspots. So what it means is whenever you go, you still are at risk. Not so in the hospital, you're still anywhere you are, you still carry the risk of carrying COVID home. So important that you maintain wherever you are, you maintain your hygiene, the distancing, and do not touch your eyes, mouth, any of your facial parts with your hands. And as soon as you come home, probably wash, put your clothes out, and those are the things. Whatever you do from going to hospital, I think as a patient also probably you should do the same things, so that because this can be there in the clinic, it can be there in the waiting area, or it can be there in any of these markets also.
So irrespective of the place, not only clinic, even the patient or normal child, when he goes out, once he comes back, he has to take all these hygienic measures.
Yes,
sir. I think one thing I would like to add it, sir, because what we have seen all these days is the hypochlorite solution that was sprayed every time. Every 2 hours it was sprayed, sir. Every room, every bed it was sprayed. Walls and the floor and around the beds also it was sprayed. So that would have prevented what we are thinking as of now, because we were never infected throughout this 1.5 months. So possibility.
Suchitra, one more doubt sir. Comes with this sodium hypochlorite or what, sir. any insecticide or viral antiviral, these the sprays, sir. How far they are safe if you are going to use them repeatedly like this?
Sir, it only depends, like if the child touches them and then keeps the hand in mouth, then we have to think about the chemical kind of reactions that may occur in the children. So only to avoid that, like once the child is there in the clinic or in your room, wherever it is, once the child moves on, you just spray it and then wait for a while, then let the next patient come in, so that you will not contaminate that area, as well as the child who would have been a suspect also will not contaminate the other next coming patient.
Okay, there is a doubt about the drug therapy for COVID also in children. Sir. Though even in adults also there is a confusion, utter confusion, that which is really effective. Any specific drug therapy is more useful in children, specifically promising?
So Fluivir, yes, what we have used was Fluivir for all the children we have used. Once we got the case as a positive for COVID, Fluivir was the first one that we have given. And
even for adults? Have you given for adults also?
Sir, adults, they have started with hydroxyurea, sir. Lopinavir and hydroxyureas were the combination that was given for adults. Whereas for children, we have kept them on azithromycin and Fluivir. Azithromycin about 2 years that we considered them. And with all the sore throat and infections like any upper respiratory infections. Also for lower respiratory, we have checked it. Only a few cases we had for lower respiratory, but most of the cases were upper respiratory. And we also had GI cases, sir. Loose stools were the presentations.
Okay. Any
So
specific medicine you give for loose stools?
for the loose stools and all, zinc was the thing. So primarily we have added zinc, and then vitamin C was given daily for all these kids to boost up the immune status. And above that, it was probiotics, sir.
Okay.
So
Dr.
this-
Preetham,
Yes, sir.
there is a question about vaccination.
Yes, sir.
Serum Institute recently announced that they are going to get a vaccine by this August, like this, August of this year.
Yes, sir.
Truly speaking, as far as my knowledge is concerned, regarding any vaccine, because after the animal trials and phase 1, 2, 3 trials, a minimum of 1 year it will take, minimum.
Yes, yes, sir.
Whereas this particular disease has started in the month of now, December end or January, and they are announcing that it's coming in August. So how is it possible to think that we can get the vaccine so early?
Sir, in a pandemic, as I had shown you, you can advance it a little, but advancing it into, seeing in 2-3 months, I don't think is a possibility, because ultimately, the the SARS vaccine, when they tried in animals, it was found that it was increasing the pneumonia lesions in few of these animals. So with that sort of a background, if you make a vaccine, and it should not end up like that thalidomide types where the drug was given and you ended up having a lot of limb defects. So I think it is, we have to take that with a pinch of salt.
As such, is there any specific drug for SARS till now? Vaccine?
No, sir.
Not yet.
No.
So the same situation we can expect.
Actually, what happened was, when they were trying to make this SARS vaccine, the disease died away. So whatever the funding was there, it just was gone. A similar scenario with Ebola. Ebola also, they tried to make a vaccine, and a lot of companies pitched in. And when the Ebola disease went away, what the US government did was they diverted all the funding to Merck and asked Merck to make the vaccine. So that is where it is still lying there.
One more question, though it's a little bit early. Regarding the flu vaccine, when we advise flu vaccine routinely, is there any possibility of cross reactivity or cross protection like BCG, which is now there is a view, though it is not confirmed, that BCG may protect against COVID. So is it possible, because BCG basically against the bacteria, whereas the COVID is a purely virus. So possibility of a cross reaction or cross protection due to flu vaccine?
Yes, sir. I would say there has been no evidence to that thing, but yeah. And the only thing was BCG. What they were contemplating was BCG. It stimulates your innate immunity.
Yes,
that way, it was helping the virus, the viral immunity. But flu vaccine causing it, and unlikely, because it's an inactivated vaccine what we give. So inactivated vaccine generally only boosts up your humoral immunity. So technically it should not.
It should not. Okay. What is the present status of hydroxychloroquine regarding usage in children?
Children, the evidence is very limited, even in adults. There was a French study which was published, and everybody started becoming very paranoid about it, including Donald Trump. And then I think everybody started using it. But the recent evidence, again published, I think 3-4 days ago or a week ago, says that it probably can be harmful.
Suchitra, just a question. Is it, what about its routine usage, hydroxychloroquine?
Yes, sir.
Recommendation for patient, proven case.
Yes, sir. We have started, sir, using hydroxychloroquine not to the children below 12. Because we were treating, we were admitting cases up to 12 years age only. So
So
medicine
are you
people
giving,
have,
because
no,
we
sir.
got the recommendation we have seen is for healthcare workers, like weekly once the dose.
Yes, sir. We are
Yes,
taking it, sir. We are
yes,
taking
you
it.
are taking it.
Yes,
What
yes,
is
sir.
the proven case when the case got admitted? Are you giving hydroxychloroquine? Is it the same schedule?
Yes, sir. For the cases also it's the same. Adults, it's the
Hmm.
same, sir.
Okay, adults
Adults,
and
it
same.
is, yes, sir. It is like a 400 mg BD on this day one, followed by that for the 7 days we give if it is a proven case. But for
Hmm.
us as a prophylaxis, we are giving like 400 mg BD on the day one, followed by that every week we are taking 400 mg for 7 weeks.
That is for healthcare workers.
Yes, sir.
I am
That is for
asking,
healthcare.
that the recommendation
Patient.
is very clear. But the
Yes, sir.
patient,
For the patient, it is for 7 days, sir. It is for the 7 days, it is 400 mg once. First day it is twice, and then followed by that for 7 days.
Yeah.
Daily. That means you are giving daily.
Yes, sir. For 7 days.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. But
Sir,
still,
couple of people have raised their hand. Dr. B. Venkateshwar Rao, you're unmuted. Please go ahead with your question, and then Dr. Surendra, then Dr. Arjun. Dr. Venkateshwar Rao, please.
Hello. Pritham, good evening.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Pritham.
Yes, sir.
What is the vaccination for an asymptomatic child who presented with mild respiratory symptoms?
Yes,
Can
sir.
he go ahead with vaccination?
Yeah. I mean, because if you're not we're not suspecting COVID-19 there anyways, isn't it? So if you're suspecting COVID-19, definitely he should not be in your clinic in the first place. So forget about vaccination. Otherwise, any other respiratory infection, we still can go ahead and give it.
Surendra,
hello.
please. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Surendra.
Yeah, good evening. Dr. Suchitra, are we
Sir, good
doing
evening, sir.
COVID test anywhere else other than Gandhi and government hospital?
No, sir, not yet, sir. Government has not issued any, anyone else to conduct the test, sir. It is only 5 centers. It is only the
And then, Dr. Suchitra, there is a confusion for all the practitioners because these
Sir.
COVID main presentation is cough and fever. And obviously, in our day-to-day OPD, also 60% comes with cough
Yes,
and fever. Then whom
Yes, sir.
we have to choose that these are the
So now,
cases possible COVID.
Yes, sir. Now the guidelines have made it clear, sir, that even with mild cough and cold, we are not going to test them unless they have severe respiratory distress syndromes. So once when they're presenting, sir.
One more
Sir?
thing, can we treat this fever and cold cases in the OPD?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, you can treat the fever and cold cases with the normal, as you treat otherwise the upper respiratory infections. Also, you can treat them. You need not send it for the swab every time. Only the cases which are very sick or which in the cases in which the fever is not coming down in spite of your medication and the treatment that you're providing for the first couple of days, at least for 5 days.
One more question.
Yeah,
One
Dr.
more
P.
question. One more question.
Please go ahead,
Hydroxychloroquine you are taking for 7 weeks. No, after
Yes,
7 weeks, what are you doing?
So this is the fourth week. What am I doing? Yes, sir.
No. After
Yes.
7 weeks, if the corona continues, what should we do? Should we continue taking weekly once or?
No,
stop
sir. No,
it
sir.
after
It is only for 7 weeks. That's it, sir. The recommendation is only up to 7 weeks, sir.
So we hope that herd immunity will come in 7 weeks.
Hopefully, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. P.V. Rao, sir, you are unmuted. Please go ahead.
So, Suchitra madam.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening, madam. For outpatient only, if the baby is sick with cold and cough, come to our OP. Can you require X-ray chest CBP is compulsory for them or not? Number one. And second question is, where will the sodium hypochlorite solution, how frequently use, how much percentage should, or how we want to prepare ourselves, if possible. Please kindly tell us.
Yes, sir. So one thing is CBP and X-ray are mandatory if you find it like a lower respiratory tract. Upper respiratory, you need not go with an X-ray as such, unless if it is like an LTB group wherein you have to rule out. Otherwise, it is not a mandatory routine examination. Second thing is you are about hypochlorite solution. Yes, sir, that it is available readily in the market, and it is like 10 ml for 1 liter. You need to mix it and then spray it in the area wherever the child is sitting, or visitors area also. This is done for every 2 hours. If the waiting period is more, then it will be better. It comes down to 1 hour every hour that you can go ahead, sir. Like you have more number of cases waiting for OPD.
Including walls and everything, if the between each.
Sir, yes, sir. But the chairs, because it is settling on the especially on the steel objects as well as your materials, plastic as well as your chairs and the tables, wherever you can't prevent the child to be not touching those surfaces. So it is better that we have to spray that, sir.
Can you touch the baby or not? Out only distance keeping and ask questions.
Sir, wear a glove, sir. Keep your hand hygiene. Every time whenever you touch, wear a glove. And also on the glove also you have to use your sanitizer. That's the only thing that we can do, sir.
Thank you.
Sir,
Yes,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, one thing
Dr. Preetham. Yeah.
One thing with the spraying is basically the spraying does not substitute your cleaning, because even the world over, previously we used to fumigate things even in the OT or NICUs. Now we've stopped doing fumigation, because whatever we are spraying or aerosolizing, it is not necessary that it reaches out to the farthest of the corners and the places which is not easily accessible. So that's why it is important that we clean. Spraying works to an extent, but important is the contact cleaning. I think that is what is the bottom line.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Arjun, you had a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah. But thank you for giving me an opportunity. First of all, thanks to Preetham for giving a beautiful presentation on COVID and dengue, and also best wishes and congratulations to our COVID warrior, Dr. Suchitra.
Thank you,
My
sir.
question is both to Dr. Preetham as well as Suchitra. See, you are saying, I mean, in my clinic, in most of our chamber clinics, ex-patient comes with URTA, and another patient comes with LRTA. A first visit, for all we know, it may be evolving COVID also. What is the guarantee that it may not be COVID? And when do we suspect and when do we refer to you? And where do we refer? And what is the SOP? Because early March also, I've had a couple of pneumonia cases and also history of travel. The moment I tell patient you go get discharged and go to Gandhi, they vanished. And in fact, invariably they are saying high fever, but when I'm noticing it is just about 100, 101, but they are saying at home child had 102, 103 in LRTA cases. For all we know, it could be evolving COVID. So which patient to be screened and sent to you and where? Thank you.
Sir, as of now, we are not screening every case of fever or every case of contact, because that we had initially
No, I'm talking about LRTIs and URTIs.
LRTIs, yes, sir. LRTI with distress, definitely you need to send them for testing, sir. LRTI with distress, that is now is the only sign wherein we need for a test. Apart from that, for URTIs and other cases of viral fevers, and no, we are not testing for any other cases, sir.
My couple of colleagues told me LRTs when they were sent to Gandhi, the triage area people did their screening. They said they are not fitting into COVID criteria, doesn't require
so that's what, sir. That LRTI should be having the criteria of the respiratory distress. Like they have to fulfill those criteria. Saturations
no,
not
but it
being
could
maintained.
be evolving. It could be just early phase of COVID.
Yes, sir. But that is very true. That is very true. Yes, sir. It is a SARI cases only. Initially, SARI cases were also tested, but now the government has come down saying that the cases which do not maintain the SATs and which require supplementation of oxygen and which are admitted in hospital.
Yeah, I got your point. But what I'm saying is, this particular patient could all be a COVID. It can go on infect others, and we may see explosion of cases as more and more clinics are open now.
Yes, sir. The only thing what we can do is isolation. We can just suggest them, because even government is seeking for the same thing, because we cannot keep many cases at this center, or nor we can keep them all the time, because the cases are turning out to be positive even after 14 days, 28 days also. So
yes,
there is no
true.
point.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir. Yeah. There is no point of extending it. Rather than we can tell them that till the symptoms are not coming down, let the child be kept in home, not to be going out, not to take them out anywhere, and let the symptoms come down before they turn
out. Also not bring for review also for us.
Yes, sir. Hopefully. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Unless they have any other new finding, they need not come back to you.
One last question, simple question to Dr. Preetham. I've got a mail from one supplier about Korean testing kits, the RTDs. So if I procure those tests, am I allowed to do testing or not?
No, sir, you're not allowed to do testing.
What is this? My fundamental right is being deprived to have an
Yes, sir.
access to
Right to
testing.
Government of India, sir. Please. We will also come.
No, but already our
sir.
neighbor Andhra Pradesh, they are doing RTDs
Yes,
procured
sir.
from South Korea.
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
everybody is doing it, sir, except Telangana state. Everybody is doing it.
Arjun sir, I request you to reserve these questions for the special exclusive session on COVID. Then we will probably
Fine,
debate,
fine.
discuss,
Sure,
and
sure.
go through all this.
Sure,
And Dr.
thank you.
Manish, you're unmuted. Please
Thanks,
go
Mr.
ahead.
Al.
Good evening, sir.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Sir, main problem మాకు పెరిషరీలా ఈ రిపోర్టింగ్ సార్ ఆల్ ఏఆర్ఐస్ ఫీవర్స్ రిపోర్ట్ చేయమంటున్నారు ఏం చేయమంటారు?
No, no, sir. Sir, the problem is actually we should report. That is because if you look at one of the case in LB Nagar,
Okay.
I think one which got admitted in one of the hospital for 3 days. This patient was referred to one of the private hospitals, and from there they sent the swab, which turned out to be positive for COVID-19. And this patient ultimately infected 11 or 12 of his family members. Out of them, 2 died. So now what happened is ultimately it bounced back onto the physician who treated the child, treated the patient, saying that on 22nd of April, the patient was admitted with you. You were treated till 25th of April. You didn't inform the DM and HO, and you had shifted the patient to another hospital on 26th, who did the on 25th, who did the swab, and that it came positive on 26th. So ultimately, the complaint was lodged against the primary physician who treated it in a nursing home. So from our end, I think it's still better that we shoot off a mail to TM and HO saying that I have this patient with respiratory infection. Now after that, it is their headache.
Yes, sir.
సార్ వన్ మోర్ క్వశ్చన్ మేడం సుచిత్ర మేడం.
Certain.
ఇక్కడ మనకు రిఫరింగ్ సార్ మేడం ఇప్పుడు ఏఆర్ఐ మేము ఇక్కడ నియర్ బై హాస్పిటల్ రిఫర్ చేస్తే అక్కడ ఎవరు పట్టించుకోవట్లేదు.
Sir, ARI.
ఏఆర్ఐ ఇప్పుడు ఎనీ ఫీవర్ విత్ 103, 104 టెంపరేచర్ విత్ రెస్పిరేటరీ డిస్ట్రెస్ నియర్ బై కోవిడ్ డిస్ట్రిక్ట్ ఏరియా హాస్పిటల్ ఎవరు పట్టించుకోలేదు.
Sir, మీరు పంపించే కంటే what you can do is just give them the medication for fever and inform that case, sir.
Okay,
ఆ
we
case
are
ఒకటి inform చేయండి.
we are giving that and informing that they are coming again back to us.
Sir, tell them that it will take due course of time unless they develop any severe findings like respiratory distress, or if there is a diarrhea, or if they are finding conjunctivitis, or if they are finding severe headache, or if the child is getting dehydrated for no reason. So if they find the severity findings cheppi valani, if they have to come back, let them come back. Otherwise, let them be at home for the next 10 days, sir. It will tell them that it will come down. If they are not coming down with the treatment that you are giving, let them come back after 10 days.
Okay, madam. Pritam sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, again now government has started hard vaccination schedule by opening vines and migrating laborers.
Yes,
That is
sir.
okay for our community, sir.
Sir, basically, sir, the thing with herd immunity is the lockdown, my opinion, I would say, lockdown cannot achieve 100% results because you can't be under indefinite lockdown all your life. So this corona, all said and done, is going to stay with us for some time, definitely. So we'll have to find out a way how to go about it. What I would look at it is the lockdown only works to improve your to try to look at resources to improve your testing mechanisms. Probably from initially we had 1,000, you go up to a lakh. That's how you can use the lockdown for, and also increase your ICU beds and other beds and manpower mobilization. So this ways probably you can use a lockdown that way, but otherwise indefinite lockdown is not going to work any which ways. But again, herd immunity is very far away because having all those people getting a herd immunity definitely would increase the mortality. So there is no simple solution to it, sir. But I think we probably have to look at I would say a restricted lockdown easing. So that is where probably we can manage both ends.
Sir, I am seeing for last 2 days practical problems are coming with physical distancing and wearing mask and hand hygiene. They're telling that if you give guarantee, I will follow this rule. Is it possible, sir?
Dr. Chandramouli, your question, please.
See,
You're
what
unmuted.
is the equivalent dose of hydroxychloroquine? One, I mean, in the chloroquine phosphate, which we take for malaria, can we take instead of that this one? Because hydroxychloroquine is not available. Second thing is whether all the people who are going to the clinics, all the doctors who are going to the clinics, do you advise them to take hydroxychloroquine?
Sir, all the doctors are advisable to take unless and until they have any comorbid conditions, especially our senior faculties and senior practitioners with their comorbid conditions like hypertensive, diabetic, or any cardiac complications if they have earlier. They need to have a check through the ECGs, and then they can go ahead with hydroxyurea, sir. And there is a dose also, minimal dose also. If it is like 400 BD for normal people, it is 200 BD for them.
No.
Yes, chloroquine
Madam, some disturbance.
Dr. Rangaya, I think I've unmuted the iPhone. Dr. Rangaya, if you're available, please go ahead. All right. Now time for a few questions which have come in the chat box. I'll request Dr. Sreekshna sir. I've unmuted you, Dr. Sreekshna sir. Please go ahead with a quick wrap-up, rapid fire of the questions which have come. Dr. Preetham, to please answer them.
Okay. Yes. Now, one question from there is an eye infection is also emerging. The report saying that COVID can spread through eye infection. Yes, so how do you prevent it?
Well, by wearing the screen, so that's visors are there. I mean, that's what
only,
the children also. Yes, sir.
That means the screens are available. Screens are advised for healthcare workers. But yes, what about the general public?
General public,
mask can be used, but not the eye protection, no? In general.
Yes, sir. Yes. Eye protection, that's what we are saying, sir. Like conjunctivitis, what we have seen earlier, the viral conjunctivitis, it is also presenting in the same way. Unless there is a discharge wherein it is spilled over and then it comes up, we cannot. That was the only reason that we were saying about the hand hygiene, and every time whenever you see a case of such thing, please you sanitize that area. That's the only thing what we are suggesting here.
Okay, then what is the you have treated many children also. What are the common symptoms the children are having with the COVID positive cases?
So most of them were asymptomatic. It was the contacts only, sir. And
are they having cough at least or fever?
Yes, sir. Cold. Yes, fever history of 1 or 2 days, not so severe like about 101. It was about 100 and 101. And sore throat were there in few cases, sir. And few children had cold, running nose, and that was not too severe. And we had.
If these are the symptoms, it is really difficult because these are the cases what we get in the day-to-day OPD also.
Yes, sir. That's what we are saying, sir. Not to get panic seeing this. That's what we say that every person now, because it is into the community spread, we cannot say that every case is normal case. Every case we need to look at like a COVID only, sir, as a COVID suspect as of now. And the only thing what we can do is prevent by sanitization. That is the only thing, sir. Distance, maintain distance and proper sanitization. This will solve 90% of all our queries, sir. How much ever we can spend, we have to spend on the sanitization.
Any deaths among the children?
Only one baby, sir. That baby was 2 months old, and he had
main
other
presentation. Main presentation.
Respiratory distress, sir. It was respiratory distress. Like yes, sir. Pneumonia was the thing, and failure to thrive was a condition. Baby was preterm also. It was a preterm failure to thrive. Actually, that was an interesting case. I mean, next when we have a time and opportunity, we will explain how the case presented and how it went on. So maybe a couple of days ahead, we will definitely present all the cases, how they are coming, and what are the probabilities that we come up. Particularly, only one case was a death, sir. But that child also could have been survived. But there was some delays in bringing the child all the way from Mahbub Nagar to Nilofer and then Nilofer to Gandhi. So there was a delay in that.
So when hydroxychloroquine cannot be given for less than 12 years, as already Dr. Chandramouli sir also asked, can we use chloroquine as a prophylaxis for children?
Chloroquine was used, sir. In 2 cases we have used. And there were no side effects that we have seen in the children as such, because chloroquine usually we use it for anti-malarial drug. So
Yes,
that was the same thing. Yeah, the dose also was the same what we have recommended, that, but we have given it only for 5 days here.
Okay, okay. Any other questions?
Dr. Rangaya, you're unmuted. Hope you can join us. Request all participants to please change your name. I can't identify iPhone and Redmi and A1187. Dr. Rangaya, if you're around, please let us know. Dr. Ram Narasimha Reddy, sir, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Okay, good evening. Hello, I am audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So thank you very much for particularly both the speakers, Preetham as well as Suchitra.
Sir, I'm not
And
the
at the
speaker for
same
today.
time-
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And at the same time, this both Sri Krishna Square, both Krishnas
They
are
are
there,
excellent.
young and energetic, and particularly RSV is doing his very good job for conducting this. He's a good technician as well as a repairer also, because some people were worried about in between. He's still is doing with his energetic, untiring, and young boy for this webinar. And after the report, I can say you follow the whatever guidelines were advised and whatever is available. So better to do all preventive measures which are available. Better to follow those preventive measures rather than prevent correction of later on. That means prevention of errors is better than correction of errors. And at the same time, all of you need not worry much about the COVID, because half of the problem is because of the fear only. You try to improve your immunity. If you are not fearful, not having fever, fear itself is improving immunity. If you have got a fever, that itself is decreasing immunity. With you all, wish you all the best. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Next, we have a question from Dr. Ganji Raju. Dr. Preetham, any change of clinical picture and severity of dengue fever over the last 2-3 epidemics, or I would say last 2-3 years? Change in the presentation and also the morbidity mortality.
Yeah, basically there are different, as we all know, there are 4 dengue viruses which cause it. So type 2 has been found to be more severe. So whenever you found that type 2 had caused the infection, so definitely the problems have been more. And we have seen that somehow, I don't know, I don't have a scientific answer for that, that during the ending stages of dengue, then the patients who come are more sicker. I don't have a scientific answer for that, why it is, but generally that's what we have seen.
Yeah, Dr. Preetham, let me extend this to my question now. Let's say we are in the month of August, and then we have a mixed picture of COVID will continue, hopefully lesser in intensity, and then dengue will start. Now in the clinic, now we have a child. What do you suggest we do? Because we'll have to choose one algorithm. You cannot assume or ignore dengue. We know how it then ends up later. So is there a clinical way in which we can distinguish these two at the outset, at the management and at the investigations?
Yeah. So I would say in COVID, as what has been found, the fevers have never been very high. And also whatever have been found, they have been with more or less diarrhea or mild cold and cough. But classically, what we have seen in dengue, usually the fevers are very high on day 1, day 2. And that is where you look at getting an NS1 done or whatever it is. So I think that is probably one point where you can probably distinguish between dengue and COVID on the day 1, day 2. And NS1 being positive, of course, is only dengue and nothing else.
I think last question, role of azithromycin in COVID. Any idea how it works, and also what is the protocol right now?
So yes, we are starting up with azithromycin for all the respiratory infections, because secondary, I mean, because COVID per se doesn't have a role for azithromycin, doesn't have a direct role for that, but definitely we have the secondary infection with that. because we are not seeing the children on day one of the contact, because we examined them or we found them suspect because the family are infected. So none of the children like presented directly with only the presentation of respiratory complaints to us have been tested. So it is not like
Yeah, Dr.
COVID doesn't.
Dr. Preetham, is it trying to cover H1N1? Or
no, basically,
what's the
good
idea?
question,
No. Basically, the Fluvair or oseltamivir is primarily given as an antiviral, more than covering H1N1. I think is more as an antiviral here.
Antiviral.
Yeah, to look at whether it helps. Of course, no study to say it helps, but we don't have too many options anyways. The lopinavir and ritonavir very expensive and not sure. Again, recent evidence says that they're as good as a placebo. The only thing which seems to be working is remdesivir, but not available in India. Only 1,000 doses have been given for trial in one of the hospitals in Mumbai. As of now, but other than that, I don't think anywhere else it is available in India. So we have very limited options. As Dr. Suchitra said, only azithromycin, Fluvair, and plus minus hydroxychloroquine. That's all we have.
Yeah. Dr. Rangaya, if we could have you, iPhone is unmuted. I hope you're on that name. We're not able to connect to Dr. Rangaya. Dr. P.V. Rao sir, last question from your end.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, sir, please go ahead. Yes.
Sure. I think this social distance may keep very well. We get anyway. Modi starting next 3 days. Trains are running very shortly next 3 days. So social movement will be more. So automatically community immunity may get it. May get it. This may solve us.
Right, sir. Dr. Srikrishna sir. Dr. Srikrishna sir, closing remarks from you, if you can sum up, and then from you hand it over to Dr. Bhaskar. Then, Dr. Srikrishna sir. Sir, you're unmuted, Dr. Srikrishna sir.
Hello. Okay.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Overall, this emergent infection epidemics, the topic is an excellent topic, and I appreciate Dr. Preetham for these details. Though main discussion is about COVID, and still the disease, which there is no clear-cut clinical picture we haven't received till now, and no clear-cut guidelines for the treatment. But it went very well. The discussion went very well. But I think you must accept that still many doubts are remained with COVID as it is. I think isn't it, Preetham?
Yes, sir.
Still there are so many doubts, and there is no clarity about the disease. But of course, the science is like this. So we hope within next 2 months at least we will get the picture. And thank you, Dr. Suchitra, also for helping, for giving a lot of information, because you are the person who is working with the cases. So I thank the Twin Cities IAP President, Dr. C.N. Reddy sir, and Secretary, Dr. Bhaskar sir, for arranging very interesting and tough topic. I think one of the tough topic till now what we are having this. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Dr. Rangaya, you are now unmuted, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Heartily congratulations, Preetham. Nicely explained about dengue as well as COVID, so many questions. And thanks to Suchitra also, she also answered many questions. Because I am now in USA, I have my friends in UK as well as here. What they're doing, hydroxychloroquine is not at all proved, and the UK they are not using, in many countries not using as the treatment or prophylaxis. That is my knowledge. Secondly, on 1st of May, from California, on Dr. Aruna Subramaniam, she is Indian American citizen. She introduced remdesivir, that is antiviral drug, and that Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is a panel doctor of White House also approved and forwarded to FDA. Once FDA comes to this antiviral drugs comes, it may be more effective. Recently, I came to know Bharat Biotech that monoclonal antibodies they are bringing, like it may be like plasma therapy. We don't know if it comes. That also so very soon they are expecting for treatment purpose. And vaccines, what Pritam told, all countries are trying, and our Bharat Biotech also clone-flu, they also trying. And other small comment on the COVID, AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, they studied 1,49,760 babies, COVID positive children less than 18 years. And they proved infants less than 1 year children are more with comorbidity, or they are like senior citizens. And what Pritam told, it's not passing through breast milk as well as, and male children are more, but what was the reason? Unknown etiology. This is my comment, and congrats to the Pritam once again.
Thank you, Dr. Rangaiah, joining us from the US. Dr. C.N. Reddy, sir, your closing remarks, and then Dr. Bhaskar for vote of thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Dr. C.N. Reddy, please go ahead.
Excellent presentation.
Yes, sir.
And excellent presentation. And so many doctors, they have learned, discussed. It was a very interactive session. And one thing I want to share with you regarding the COVID-19 vaccine. We cannot expect any vaccine for another few years. If we are suffering with dengue, since decades we are suffering from HIV, still the effective vaccine is not available in the world. We cannot expect in a few months. That is, I think you agree with me, Dr. Pritam.
Yes, sir. Yeah, definitely, sir.
And one more thing, can you share in 2 sentences? You are doing practice, and what is your experience during this lockdown period?
Sir,
you are getting normal patients, normal diseases, there is common diseases, and any dengue fevers or any other diseases, are you are seeing any difference in the practicing method of practicing and also type of patients?
Sir, I think all of us have become very careful, I would say. Definitely, I think we're all washing whatever, washing hands and having all our protective equipment, and that definitely the touch with the patient is gone, I would say, with all these limitations. But thankfully, for the last 15-20 days, you're not seeing too many infection patients. I mean, I don't know, probably the social distancing has taken away all the communicable diseases, probably. But otherwise, most of the patients whomever we are seeing are newborns.
Also,
yes, sir.
Maybe junk food and this pizzas and pastas and chaats.
True, sir, true.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pritam, and also thank you, Dr. Suchitra, for interacting and sharing this session. And not sharing it because you are working in a Gandhi. We had a lot of information from you, and I thank Dr. Sri Krishna, both Sri Krishnas, looking after technical things, and one is coordinated this program. I thank all the EB members. I thank all seniors and all the, on behalf of IAPTCB, I thank one and all. I hand over to Dr. Bhaskar for closing remarks.
Dr. Bhaskar, for vote of thanks, please.
Thank you, President C.N. Reddy. At the outset, my sincere apologies for some interruption due to some technical snag. It's very unfortunate to have this. It had happened for the first time since last 11 days. However, thank you, Dr. Pritam. It was very informative and very effective. There was an excellent, good interaction. My special thanks to Dr. Suchitra. She tried to go away from COVID-19 discussions, but somehow we were lucky enough to drag in our unknowingly. Thank you, Dr. Suchitra, for your valuable inputs. And my special thanks to Dr. Sri Krishna, our Central IAB member, for moderating so well, asking so many useful questions to all the practitioners, academicians. And my thanks to Sri Krishna, RSV, UNICEF. He is the backbone of all these webinars. Had he not been there, probably I would have had these interruptions every day, several times. Thank you, Sri Krishna, for really taking care of these webinars. And my real thanks to our participants from India and from abroad for sitting here for not less than 1 hour 50 minutes. There were more than 140 participants eagerly listening to our speaker, our Suchitra and Dr. Sri Krishna. Thank you all. Thank you one and all. And tomorrow we have another webinar, same time, that is severe asthma, but what is new in it, by none other than Dr. Then one more, asthma mimics, by Dr. U. Narayan Reddy. So see you all tomorrow evening.
Sir, before you end, sir, I think I should congratulate all of you for doing a wonderful job. And it's difficult to get 150 people to attend anything. I know it personally. I mean, I just finished one of my secretaryship, so I know it is difficult. I think all of you are doing a tremendous job. Yeah.
It's a teamwork. Really, my thanks to our EB, our president, and speakers who are readily accepting and coming forward enthusiastically. I knew this when Preetham is here. I was expecting around 140, 150. It had happened. Really. So thank you, one and all. Safe stay. Good night. Enjoy your dinner in India, lunch at US. Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Make sure you press on leave meeting and then exit. Otherwise, the app runs in the background and it's a security risk. I'm ending the meeting here. That's all from IIP TCB. Good night.
Good night.